Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidikena yopakarotam pravaram muninam Patanjalim pranjaliranadosmi stuve Patanjalim vyasam shankaram cha munitrayam kartrasutrasya bhashyasya kramat vivaranasya cha. We are continuing the discussion on this sutra. The last sutra we discussed was Ritambhara-Prajna. So Ritambhara-Prajna, that's the subject of discussion which will continue today. So Ritam avikalpidam satyamidi yavat tat vibharti prakashayati iti Ritambhara. So something that reveals true knowledge. So when you get this higher level of intuition, apart from knowledge, you also get a strong inner conviction that this is the fact. So that second aspect is unique to this level of intuitive knowledge. It is called Ritambhara. Now, in the yogic practice, this happens at a particular stage when all previous or all other vrittis, vasanas and samskaras get suppressed. Suppression perhaps is not the right word, transcended. And you evolve a unique, a great samskara which is conducive, which is helpful for spiritual life, which suppresses all other samskaras. So one great positive samskara emerges, which helps us in our spiritual life. So maybe this needs some explanation. As I mentioned earlier, every act, every intellectual or physical or verbal activity produces a residual effect called vritti, which resides in our mental system, which becomes a tendency, which influences our habits, attitudes, behavior patterns. And when they become a solid, strong tendency, it is called the samskara. So we all interact with different experiences, different people. We react to our own experiences and we also react to experiences coming from outside. Just under the influence of these samskaras, which constitute our real personality. So beyond the physical personality, there is a real personality which is nothing but it is collection of these samskaras or tendencies. So it's a very interesting, very, very unique method that Patanjali evolves here. So now, see what is method. First, Patanjali is talking about vrittis. So, what are vrittis? Vrittis are residual effects of actions. Then he is talking about vritti nirodha, means going beyond vrittis, not suppression as frequently translated, but rather transcending. We will understand what it means, what is suppression, what is transcendence. To these two aspects will be influenced. When you transcend, you go beyond its influence. When you suppress, you are still within its influential sphere. So that's a major difference. So we'll come to that. So first vritti, then vritti nirodha. And after transcending all these vrittis, we evolve a very great vritti, that vritti called samskaras. So a very great, unique samskara. So Frequently, yoga commentators say the first step in spiritual life is to evolve a high ideal. If we can divert all our energies, actions and thoughts in one direction, which will help us to evolve a high ideal, then what happens? All these samskaras, all these tendencies get organized and they get refined. They get a positive orientation towards a higher ideal. That becomes one great positive samskara. And then you have to transcend even that positive samskara. So reaching that great positive samskara is called Sabija Samadhi. Going even beyond that is called Nirbija Samadhi. So that is the evolutionary process that Patanjali develops. So before that, I shall explain this the previous sutra in order to make clear. Sutta Anumana Prajnabhyam Annivishaya Vishesharthatvad. So Ritambhara-Prajna, this higher intuitive power, is explained. It is a knowledge. It cannot even be called a knowledge. It's kind of intuition, which goes beyond books, which goes beyond intellectual cognition, which goes beyond whatever knowledge we acquire from books, from ideas, from lectures, for anything. There is a difference. Any knowledge that we get from books, we organize or we analyze that knowledge on the basis of what we hear or we read, and also on the basis of kind of inward logical analysis. So, logical analysis I already explained, we won't go to repeat again. It has something to do with the Vedantic or Hindu epistemology. I already explained, I won't go into details, but to understand the uniqueness of the Ritambhara-Prajna, it's better to understand this. There are 10 tools of Hindu epistemology. It's something very, very exhaustive, 10 stages of Hindu theory of knowledge. Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda, Arthavatya, Anuvalabdhi, Sambhava, Aitihya, Cheshta, and Parishesha. These are the 10 tools. It's something very interesting. The most exhaustive epistemology in any philosophical system is found in this ancient Hindu philosophy. Something very interesting. The first one is Pratyaksha, which is called direct perception. We cognize things with our eyes, so I come to know of something through visual contact. Mind and eyes together will see an object and I understand. Mind and sense of hearing going together, I come to know of something which produces a noise. And then I may seize an object, an animal in a zoo, which I don't know the name of, and I try to understand it on the basis of some previous knowledge through comparison, analogy. Or I may read a book, verbal testimony, or another one is Arthavati. Arthavati actually means anticipated presumption. That is the kind of an attempt to translate Arthavati into English. This is standard received translation used by logicians. So anticipated presumption, something very funny. This is a classic example is there. A man called Devadatta. Every day he's getting fatter, more muscular, healthier, but you won't find him eating anything during daytime. So there is a logical inconsistency. You try to solve the problem. This man must be eating all the night. So it is called anticipated presumption. So this is Anubhalabdhi. So this is called Arthavati. The sixth one is Anubhalabdhi, the cognition of the non-existence of something. So I come to know that it doesn't exist. That also is a knowledge. So absence of knowledge gives you the knowledge of absence of knowledge. So that's a very intricate analysis of Hindu epistemology. These are the 6 tools which are used in Vedanta and also in the Bhatta Mimamsa schools to understand, in those who are interested in something very intellectual exercise. See, Indian materialists is called Charvakas. Charvaka, the word Sanskrit word, Charu Vak Vadadi, the Charvaka. Somebody who speaks nice words. That's literal meaning. Which means there should be something which is really not very nice. So called in the cutthroat Indian materialists, Valsyayana and others called Charvakas. They accept only one tool, epistemological tool, direct perception. They won't accept anything which is not directly perceived. Then there are some schools, Buddhists for example, they accept Pratyaksha and Anumana. I mean, they accept direct perception and also inference. So, both Shunyavadins, Vijnanavadins, Sautrantikas and Vaibhashikas, the 2 schools of idealists called Vijnanavadins and Shunyavadins, and 2 schools of realists called Sautrantikas and Vaibhashikas. They accept only 2 tools, Pratyaksha and inference, Anumana. They don't accept any book. Buddhists traditionally did not accept any verbal testimony. So they rejected the Vedas. They won't consider Upanishads as a source of knowledge. Then some schools of yoga, Sankhyas and Yogas accept 3. They accept the Vedas. So Pratyaksha, Anumana and Shabda they accept. Analogy is sometimes included in inference through some kind of an extension. And then this is called Arthapatti, as I mentioned earlier. It is sometimes included in inference. So in Aristotle and others, you find inference includes a vast umbrella of epistemological tools. For example, analogy is included in inference or related, and presumption, Arthapatti, is also included in inference. But Hindu epistemologists, they analyze everything threadbare. So they accept 6 very important, very solid and quite distinct tools of knowledge. Through extension, some Pauranikas, they accept Sambhava means an event. An event can be analyzed on the basis of direct perception or inference, but they make it something you have seen. An ordinary event, Sambhava. Aitihya means hearsay, which is not accepted as a tool of epistemology by Vedantins. So total 8. It's a different intellectual exercise. So as a diversion, little bit of a thing. There is other 2 epistemological tools, very funny. The 9th one is called Cheshta, gesture. If somebody is sitting in the street, somewhat pot is not eaten for several days, and he stretches out his hands, it clearly shows that man wants food. That is called Cheshta, gesture. The 10th one was used by Sherlock Holmes. It is called the Law of Exclusion. When you rule out all other possibilities and you reduce everything to one possibility. It is called Parisheshya Nyaya, means what is left out based on that. So very interesting. So you find these Indian philosophers writing books right from 4th millennium BC up to almost 1600 AD, they developed so many different elaborate tools of epistemology. So, okay, now coming to the subject, what Patanjali says is, there is one kind of intuition which gives you a knowledge and also will gives you an inherent intuitive conviction that it is a fact. Every knowledge we get from a book, we may be convinced of it, but there is also maybe 1% scope for skepticism. Whatever you hear from somebody, whatever even you see, you may see this may happen now, but won't happen again. So that knowledge is not 100% reliable. Any event which you try to understand, any knowledge that comes through direct perception, inference, analogy or comparison or verbal testimony or any of these epistemological tools of theory of knowledge, you may get it, but there is always, you won't get the full conviction that it is a fact. So when you reach Ritambhara-Prajna, there is a higher intuitive understanding of our mind, then there is no doubt left behind. Because nobody can shake your conviction. Every knowledge that we develop through logical analysis can be countered or can be refuted by using another logical instrument. But a knowledge, a higher intuitive knowledge that comes through this Ritambhara-Prajna, this inner conviction, it can never be shaken. So that is why one great writer, Prabodhini, says, Ritam avikalpidam satyamidi yavat tat vibharti prakashayeti iti Ritambhara. You Ritam satyamidi, this is a fact. You get that conviction. Maybe if you can see this at different levels. The most common example is among spiritual seekers, spiritual persons. A person who believes in God, a person who believes in spiritual values, and who have developed this higher intuition. You try to shake his conviction, you can't do that. Logically, he may not be able to defend his views, but he will hold his view because it's a matter of his own inner intuitive experience, which we cannot be shaken, which you cannot question. That Ritambhara-Prajna happens at different lower levels, not only in spiritual area, but even science, great scientists who devote a whole life, mysticism, poetry, art, literature, great men and women who developed their area of specialization to a higher transcendental level that goes beyond logical analysis, develop this intuitive inner conviction. It cannot be shaken. That's why Sruta Anumana Prajnabhyam Annivishaya Vishesarthatvad means it has its own unique form. So it cannot be revealed either by verbal testimony or a logical analysis or through any of the 10 tools of epistemology. So that is the 49th sutra. 50th sutra is Tajjaha Samskaraha Anya Samskara Pradibandhini. What is the advantage of reaching this level of Ritambhara-Prajna? This Ritambhara-Prajna produces a samskara. And this samskara has got one advantage. It helps you to transcend other samskaras. At all other levels, where you do not develop this Ritambhara-Prajna, this inner intuitive conviction, that is a knowledge or conviction plus a strong conviction that that knowledge, that conviction is true. These two together. It's called Ritambhara-Prajna in actual practice. Now, this produces a kind of samskara. That samskara, what happens? That samskara obstructs all other samskaras, subliminal samskaras. This is a literal translation of this sutra. Now, what it means is, according to the commentators, there is a very interesting description. This Ritambhara-Prajna produces a samskara, and this samskara will will help you to transcend, to remain untouched, unaffected by other samskaras. What are other samskaras? You can test yourself. Well, you are doing work in an office, you're traveling, okay. But you sit in a church or a temple or a place of worship, wherever, in your own room, of course, in your own solitude, and try to meditate. Then you find all these suppressed demons within the mental system start emerging. Why? Because you are trying to counter this plurality of other negative samskaras. You are going in search of something higher. So all the other samskaras come with mighty force and will confront you. If you read a novel, no problem. If you travel, if you watch a TV, no problem. But if you sit quiet in solitude and try to think of some higher ideal, immediately all samskaras which you don't want, which you consider to be undesirable, will come with a mighty force. And this is called Vyuthana samskara. Vyuthana samskara means samskaras which are already there in mental system, waiting to pounce upon you, just to waiting for an opportunity. When does the opportunity arise? When you try to transcend them, when you try to ascend yourself to a higher level of concentration, then all these negative samskaras, vrittis and tendencies will start emerging, not otherwise. Now, this doesn't happen when you reach this Ritambhara-Prajna. Why? Because a strong, mighty, big, positive samskara is created, which counters the re-emergence of suppressed or accumulated negative tendencies and samskaras coming from the mental system. So one big positive samskaras one should develop in spiritual. That's the first step. These positive samskaras, these positive tendencies, sometimes that's why, a high ideal, we must have a high ideal in front of us. So if you have a high ideal, then we'll be able to organize our mental energies, tendencies in one high positive dimension. They will not go in the negative dimension. So Swami Vivekananda says, what's the difference between a man or woman with an ideal and another person, no ideal? Vivekananda says, a person without any ideal will commit 50,000 mistakes. A person with a high ideal may make one mistake. Mistakes will be there, but without an ideal, what happens? Mental energies will start flowing in all directions through all the five senses of perception and mind, in all directions. So, this Ritambhara-Prajna produces a samskara which obstructs the samskara Vyuthana. Vyuthana, you should remember. Vyuthana actually it means re-emerging, emerging from inside. So that means when we try to meditate, or when you try to read a good book, or when we try even to do something noble, there will be other tendencies which may not be willing to permit us to do the noble deed we want to do. Tendencies which try to prevent us from going ahead. This phenomenon is called Vyuthana. All these samskaras are completely neutralized when you develop one great, unique samskara. It's called this Ritambhara-Prajna. And then what happens, when you develop Ritambhara-Prajna through these higher samskaras and become totally established in that, then there is no possibility of your falling a victim to other samskaras. So there are different ways of escaping negative tendencies. One, to keep those tendencies away from us, to keep us from those tendencies. Now, this may work for some time. Even if you see, for example, in the most simple example, alcoholism and drug addiction. Close proximity, availability of these things will naturally prompt a normal person who has a tendency to be addicted to fall a victim. So if you keep that person away from close proximity of these things, that serves a purpose. Or if you keep them away from him or him away from them, both will serve a purpose, but it only temporary. It is not a permanent solution. Because at some level, when the samskaras are strong, the person will go out for it, in search of it. Now, why? Because the tendencies are already strong in his system. These tendencies are called like seeds which can sprout if they fall on a fertile soil. So, there are two types of seeds. One type of seeds, it may not sprout if the soil is not fertile. But if those seeds happen to fall in fertile soil, it may sprout. So, undesirable tendencies may become a strong characteristic in circumstances conducive to undesirable tendencies. But suppose you take those seeds on a plate or a frying pan, put oil and fry it, then those seeds cannot, you put those seeds, you plant those seeds in the most fertile soil, it cannot sprout. So Yoga and Vedanta both take this called, Dagdha Bija and Adagdha Bija. Bija means seed. So soil, the seeds of vegetables, seeds of grains, if you fry, then they are no more active. They are as good as non-grains. You can put them in the most fertile soil and put water and manure, nothing will happen. So what it means is, this Ritambhara-Prajna will fry those negative samskaras through concentration. And then what happens? When this happens, slowly we will be able to go beyond the influence of these samskaras. I shall try to explain this in the light of Swami Vivekananda's interpretation. As I was doing earlier, Vivekananda gives a more modern interpretation. Before that, it may be a good idea to refer to some of the other commentators also, but I shall come to that later. So Swami Vivekananda says, Tajjaha samskaraka anya samskara pradibandhini. We have seen in the foregoing aphorism that the only way of attaining to that superconsciousness is by concentration, and we have also seen that what hindered the mind from concentration are the past samskaras, impressions. All of you have observed that when you are trying to concentrate your mind, your thoughts wander. When you are trying to think of God, that's the very time these samskaras appear. So when you try to move in a positive direction, then only the temptations to move in the negative directions become stronger. So mind has a tendency to disobey, to do exactly what you ask it not to do. So that's why many yoga psychologists and Vedantins at some point make statement, there is no such thing as controlling the mind, restraining the mind. It is used in translations. But in actual practice, what you do, you divert your mind to something higher so that it gets diverted away from something that's lower. So, that's the psychology behind the concept of pratyahara. Pratyahara means withdrawing the senses and eventually mind from undesirable external objects. Well, how do you do that? You create a counter focus within ourselves so that a mind that naturally gets focused on undesirable external objects gets focused on a desirable higher ideal. That's why this emphasis on creating one unique great samskara which neutralizes the power of negative samskaras. That's why I mentioned. And again, that great positive samskaras also should be transcended. It is called Nirbija Samadhi, which we are going to discuss later. So, when you are trying to think of God, that's the very time these samskaras appear. At other times, they are not so active. But when you want them not there, to be there, they are sure to be there, trying their best to crowd in your mind. Why should that be so? So, frequently if you take a medicine, what happens? You are benumbing actually. We are actually killing our natural human faculty to be sensible to our own tendencies. But what yoga is trying to do is, yoga is trying to solve the problem root and branch. Yoga is giving you a counter focus. And that's the most natural way of turning the mind away. That's why there are solutions for psychological problems at psychiatric level. But they are only temporary solutions. Permanent solutions for psychological problems can be found only at spiritual level. When you transcend mind, then mind becomes happy, healthy. When you transcend body, body is healthy. See, when your body reminds you of its existence, how does it remind you that is a kind of pain on the head or stomach or somewhere? So immediately mind goes to the body. So body reminds you when it is not healthy. When you don't remember you have a body, it means you are perfectly healthy at the bodily level. So also when you are not aware of your own mind, then mind is healthy. When you transcend it, you transcend the awareness of it. When you are aware of something higher, then you transcend mind, which means your mind is perfectly healthy. So, why should they be so much more potent at the time of concentration, these negative samskaras? It's because you are repressing them and they react with all their force. So, that's an important people who try to meditate, 13 hours in the office in Silicon Valley and 14, 15 hours, then come and sit straight, meditate. I've seen, you can see muscle with a very strong grim expression on their face, sitting straight. But afterwards they feel headache, they feel all these things. So what happens, mind should be first diverted to some positive channel, and then it should be diverted to spirituality. If mind is, if you, from an active work, occupation or job or whatever it is, when you try to meditate, it's just like you are accelerating a car from 0 to 180 miles in split second in a jerky road, where the road is not smooth, and you accelerate in 1 split second. If it happens, it can create a lot of friction, lot of jerk, lot of disturbance. So what happens is, at that time, all these negative samskaras, they come with a vengeance and try to drag us away from concentration. So that's why in Vedantic tradition, where meditative techniques are much more refined and much more elaborate, they insist that you should lift your mind from one level to another higher level and then to another higher level. So a person who has done a lot of hard work for 13 hours, 14 hours in the office, that person should first of all sit relaxed, can read some spiritually helpful book or listen to something spiritually illuminating or helpful, and slowly lift the mind to a slightly higher level, and can perhaps listen to sacred hymns, stotras, prayers, and then try to meditate. Otherwise, what happens? These demons, which are chained, they break all chains and they come to the surface. That's Swami Vivekananda is referring to. It's because you are repressing them and they react with all their force. So repression involves a sudden jerk and friction and disturbance. At other times they do not react. How countless these old past impressions must be, all lost somewhere in the chitta, ready waiting like tigers to jump up. First, samskaras and impressions from immediate past experiences may come, then experiences from distant past, and then experiences and ideas. Some experiences will come along with visual images or audio images. Experiences that you already had in this life, which you remember correctly, will come back with visual and audio images. Ideas and tendencies which come from nowhere, I see from nowhere, they come from another source, from previous life cycles. So, yoga psychologists and modern yoga psychologists, Vedanta psychologists, they try to draw a line of demarcation. It's a very, very clearly, very logical. But what they say is, when you remember an event, or when these ideas come to the mind, crowding together, with visual or audio images, they may have their roots in this life, which as a hypnotist or psychologist may try to help you by helping you to travel, to let your mind travel backward in time to memory formation days. But there are ideas and obsessions and phobias and anxieties which appear without any obvious or visible connection to experience of this life. Then they must be coming from another previous life cycles. So that's what you read in Buddha's life, Buddha's 544 life cycles he went through when he tried to meditate. It's called Jataka tales you find in Buddha's story, Leda Vistar and others. All these 544 and 548 sometimes, according to some other authors. Different stories in which Buddha played different roles. He went through these different life cycles, which come back in the form of memories, which he transcended and eventually became the Buddha, the enlightened one. How countless these old past impressions must be, all launched somewhere in the chitta, ready waiting like tigers to jump up. So these impressions are there. That's why we are able to recognize an object. So when we see an object in front of us, we recognize, we identify, we interact with that object. We interpret that object or an event because corresponding impressions are there already in the mental system. So these impressions help you determine how you interpret an event or an external object that you see outside. So that is the view of Buddhists, the Vijnanavadi schools of Buddhists, from which the mindfulness always emerged. These have to be suppressed, that one idea which we want to rise to the exclusion of others. So what happens the first stage when you practice Ritambhara-Prajna is, these negative samskaras should be positively neutralized. The word suppression is used. You have to remember, Swamiji had to use the vocabulary available in those times. But now in modern psychology and psychiatry, the word suppression has new connotations. So modern yoga psychologists use the word transcending, which is, transcending means you reach a point where it's no more going to affect you at all. That's what Swamiji is referring to here. These are the various powers of the samskaras in hindering concentration of the mind. So this samadhi, which just has been given, is the best to be practiced on account of its power of suppressing samskara. So remember, this is the sutra we are dealing with, Tajjaha. Tajjaha means a samskara that's born from this Ritambhara-Prajna samskara, Anya samskara pratibandhini. They block, they obstruct all other samskaras. Because one great samskara is created, which neutralizes all other. Other here means undesirable, spiritually unhelpful samskaras get completely neutralized by the power of these new great samskaras. The samskara which will be raised by this sort of concentration will be so powerful that it will hinder the action of the others and hold them in check. Now next, tasyapi nirodhe sarva nirodha nirbija samadhi. Now, next is nirbija samadhi. Nirbija samadhi means where all the vrittis, samskaras get completely burned or fried so that they cannot any longer sprout and become plants and trees and bearing poisonous fruits, which may influence our actions. So you find this. It's a very interesting thing. You find one classic example. Even among great spiritual seekers, there are some minor flaws. Really, they are not flaws, tendencies. Actually, these tendencies do not affect them, but still they remain with them. They do not affect them. So that's why when these samskaras are completely neutralized, still some of the tendencies and impressions which are strictly physical may continue. I can give many examples. Many great spiritual teachers, many world epoch makers. See, even when they reach the highest level of spiritual illumination, you find they still retained some of the tendencies and samskaras and attitudes of the culture of the society that they were born into. This is what I am talking about. So frequently, the great teachings of the great holy scriptures of the world contain these secondary aspects. But people try to interpret the great teachers on the basis of these irrelevant secondary aspects of their teachings, completely forgetting the central spiritual message of the great religious traditions. So, to give an example, if you read the Bible, if you read the parables, for example, sower of the seed, or any parable, Samaritan, or Good Samaritan, all these, which present before you a social, rural, pastoral culture of those times. If you read the Dhammapada, if you read Jataka tales of Buddha, you find all the different life cycles that Buddha went through, present before you many aspects of his life. So food habits, tendencies, attitudes, all these will remain, which is part of the physical body system. But in real essence, they transcend all this. So that's an important. These samskaras may remain. They are the examples of samskaras which are already burned because they don't do any harm to you. See, a person born in a Middle Eastern social structure or a person born in different tradition, food habits, dress code, language, illustrations, imageries you use in parables, the cultural setting, all will be different from one tradition to another tradition. So their lifestyle, their dress code, some of the tendencies also may be colored by these factors. These are all irrelevant, minor, secondary details. But these samskaras do not alter their essence, because these samskaras are examples of the, as you mentioned, seeds which are already burned, which cannot sprout anymore. Now next, by the restraint of even these great samskaras. So now Patanjali is going to discuss the highest samadhi called Nirbija Samadhi. So we have to remember, the whole plan of Patanjali's system is analysis of Vrittis. Whole life, Vrittis are the residual effects of our karmas, samskaras, which become sankalpas and which we continue causing these continuous life cycles. These Vrittis should be transcended, called Vritti Nirodha, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. How to attain the Chitta Vritti Nirodha? By reaching Ritambhara-Prajna. Ritambhara-Prajna means one great samskaras, spiritually healthy samskara, should be created so powerful that it neutralizes all negative, unhealthy samskaras. Now we have reached the Sabija Samadhi. But this great samskara, it's also is an obstruction. It should be transcended before we attain our goal, our true identity, that we are the Atman, we are the soul, we are the Purusha. And before reaching that stage, even this great Ritambhara-Prajna samskara also should be transcended, go beyond it. That's the subject of discussion in this sutra. You remember that our goal is to pursue the soul itself. So what is the soul? So you have to keep in mind the landscape of Patanjali's Sankhya Patanjali yoga system. Two fundamental categories, Purusha and Prakriti. Our true nature is we are the enlightened one, the illumined one. We forget that. When we live in this world, when we identify ourselves with the external objects, with this empirical phenomena, with all these momentary sensory experiences, we delude ourselves into thinking that we are not the Purusha, we are not the soul. We are just part of the evolutionary process, Prakriti. So this should be reversed. So through evolution, we start identifying ourselves with our intellect, with our mind, with our emotions, our attitudes, with what we enjoy or suffer through mind and senses of perception. So every time when we become angry, we identify ourselves with our anger. Suppose we can sit and watch our own anger as a witness, then we won't be angry. That's the idea behind. If when people become unhappy, if they can delink themselves from unhappiness, when they become angry, if they can break the link that connects them with anger, and you sit in a gallery and watch your own anger or your own grief, your own sorrow, then you are no more sorrowful. You are freed from this. When you become a witness, you are free from it. So a witness cannot be a participant in the criminal act. He should know it, but he should be free from it. So the word witness used in the yoga system and also in the Buddha system, Buddha tradition, in mindfulness and all that. It comes from the ancient Sanskrit word used in the Indian philosophical systems called sakshi. So sakshi is the original word from which this witness, all this, either in the yoga system or Patanjali Sankhya system or Buddha tradition. They all borrowed this idea from the ancient Vedic Upanishad, the word called sakshi in Sanskrit. The definition of the word sakshi is a witness. That's the meaning, witness, somebody who has seen an event without being part of it. So sakshi is defined by great Indian philosophers, Vedanta philosophers. That means audasinyatvad bodhrutvat sakshitvam. What it means is, udasina means you are not participating in the drama. You are a non-participant. You are sitting in a gallery and the drama is being played out on the stage, so you are a witness. But if you have not seen the drama, if you close your eyes, you cannot be called a witness. So you should be aware of the drama going on at the stage. You yourself should not have played that. Then also you cannot be a witness. So witness means you should be awareness plus non-participation. So awareness and non-participation. These are two important characteristics. That's what Swamiji is trying to refer to right now. When you reach this stage of Nirbija Samadhi, then you can watch yourself becoming angry. And then you are no more angry. Because you de-identify yourself with your anchor. It is kind of reverse identification. So that's what this Swami is talking about here. You remember that our goal is to pursue the soul itself. We cannot pursue the soul because it has got mingled up with nature, with the mind, with the body. The ignorant man thinks his body is the soul. The learned man thinks his mind is the soul. So it's an ascending level of identification. A man who is not very different from brute thinks that he is just his body. Very much like an animal. A learned man who reads books, who may sometimes go beyond his body consciousness. When he reads a very wonderful book, when he's immersed in that, he thinks or he interprets himself as intellect or mind. This is an ascending level of identification. But both of them are mistaken. What makes the soul get mingled up with all these different waves in the chitta rise and cover the soul? Our actions, our words, our deeds, our impressions, all will create these waves, and they have enveloped and covered the soul, which is our true nature. We see only a little reflection of the soul through these waves. So if the wave is one of anger, we see the soul as angry. So we see ourselves as the one who gets angry. So if the wave is one of anger, we say, I am angry, we say. If it is one of love, we ourselves reflected in that wave, we become we identify ourselves. If the wave is one of weakness, the soul is reflected. So whatever we identify with, that we interpret ourselves to be. So what is needed is a kind of de-identification. We should, when we de-identify ourselves, when we de-link ourselves with what is happening within our own mind and the outside world, then what happens? We can watch our own anchor. We can watch our own happiness. How do we do that in actual life? Once in a while, we should read books, we should listen to ideas, we should associate with people from whom we get, well, we are not this body after all. We have something other than this body. Body is there, mind is there, but somewhere, sometime we should remember, well, we are something little more than this psychophysical mechanism. That's one solution. Then what about this body, mind, intellect, all these things? They are there, but they are part of the changing phenomena. There is something other than all this within our own system. Anyway, so we are coming to the conclusion of this class today. We will continue the discussion. There are a few more very important ideas related to this before we finish this particular chapter. Now we can have interaction maybe for about 8 minutes. We can ask questions. Most welcome.
I'm guessing that when you refer to non-participation,
yeah,
you're not saying literally not participate on the stage of life. You're saying, I'm thinking that we participate. It's kind of our dharma to participate. We do it with a reduction of attachment to outcome. Is that?
Yeah. When we see, in actual practice, when people get involved in different actions and activities, we produce multiple feelings and mental responses, anger, happiness, unhappiness, etc. If we can try to interpret ourselves. In fact, we ourselves frequently identify ourselves with something other than the physical body. So when you feel I have a wound on my shoulder, you are interpreting the I as the body. But if you say I'm angry, or I'm happy, it's not the body. It is something other than the body, which is angry or happy. I like this book, or this little book is boring. It could be mind or intellect. And also we use the word my mind, the possessive case. We use the word my mind, my intellect, my body. So who is the I when you use the word my mind, my intellect? It should be something other than intellect and mind. So it is possible for people to dealing themselves with the psychophysical mechanism. Frequently it is done without any kind of awareness. Think of a great scientist. In modern times it's less possible because we store the data in a computer, and other time our mind is busy with anything else. Again, come back to the computer. But maybe before computer was invented, during the time of Newton, for example, he was always busy thinking about his scientific ideas. He practically forgot everything else. This could happen to philosophers even today, or those who are extremely, obsessed with intellectual ideas. But it is often happening without awareness. Great interest, great obsession with an idea also can help you to transcend, to go beyond body and mind. Yoga tells you it should be done with perfect freedom and awareness. Because what happens, when you do that with awareness, then you can go ahead further and further. When this happens without awareness, without any proper discipline, like yoga discipline, meditation, etc., then after this great obsessive work in a laboratory, a scientist comes back again and hits the rock bottom. Again, next day, again to the laboratory, he forgets his psychophysical mechanism. A yogi or anyone who practices meditation is trying to reach this kind of identification with something other than psychophysical mechanism through discipline, deliberate practice. That's the difference. Yoga involves freedom and independence and awareness. Other areas do not involve freedom and independence. That's the idea behind it. Yeah.
Namaste, Swami. How does one stabilize being identified with the witness? It seems as though there's times in which one is aware of being the witness, but other times in which the mind is identified with the fluctuations of thought and interaction with the outside world. So how does one stabilize being in a state of constant awareness?
Yeah. In actual practice, you cannot do your duty or your work when you're always thinking of yourself as a witness. Because a full focus of mind doesn't happen. What it means is, even when there's a problem, when we lose our control, when we completely become obsessed with these things, when we lose our balance sometimes due to extreme anxiety, then we should remember these things are part of the changing nature. I have got another identity which is higher than this. This is what actually happens. This has been the example given by Shankaracharya and others, the great examples. Really speaking, from a psychological point of view, when you're doing a work, actual work, if a doctor is operating a surgery and he is a witness only, it's not possible. But a person, suppose you do a lot of dedicated work, lot of effort, and then you get a lot of success, but frequently you may also get negative results in spite of your best effort. If we practice this, we'll be able to counter the problems that we may encounter otherwise. Otherwise, it creates a lot of anxiety, fatigue and all that. So, witness attitude is a kind of technique that's, this is one thing. For a yogi, this becomes natural. A yogi never asks this question. Okay, for him, everything other than the Atman is part of the changing nature. We don't ask the river, why do you flow? It is nature. We ask the wind, why do you blow, why do you move like this? We don't ask the wind. It's nature. So once we understand it is the inherent nature of this world and everything connected to this world, to change all the time, to be always in a flux, then it doesn't occur at all. But before that, when we get too much identified, and that creates problems, when that creates problems, we can say, well, there is something higher than that.
As a continuation of that, so through perhaps adapting an attitude of karma yoga or through selfless service, it's possible to actualize that state. I don't mean necessarily the intellectual understanding, but to rest in that state. Rather.
Karma yoga is one great help. Karma yoga radically alters your mind. It is not often recognized, unfortunately. Karma yoga alters the mind without our being aware of it. It's a person who goes on doing good deeds without even being aware of the fact he's doing good deeds. He eventually becomes a better human being. So actions produce an invisible result, which actually change the man's mind, and his chittam, his vrittis, his vasanas get completely refined and altered through sheer physical action, which everyone can do. So karma yoga is the first step. So when karma yoga produces these positive tendencies, then it refines the mental system. And then it becomes easy to remain undisturbed as a witness, even when something happens which may create problems, but we remain we can non-identify ourselves with that. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will, of course, now one important announcement. This is the last class before the summer recess. So I'll be away for some few weeks. Our next class will be on Friday, September the 21st at 7:30 p.m. So please remember, this is the last class on Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So we will have our Sunday lecture day after tomorrow, which will be, which won't be unrelated to the subject, that is meditation for health. So we will have the Sunday lecture day after tomorrow. But after that, the next Friday class will be on September 21st at 7:30 p.m. After summer recess. Thank you. Namaskar. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Pranamastu.